All right, so you've gone and you've done some thinking about this piece and you shared that out on your Canvas, but just quickly, we're going to try to capture some of that here. So having read this piece on hand dryers from Avid Weekly, which this may have been your second swim through it, or it should be your second swim through it, having written questions in the reading part. Now that you've noticed what it did well from a writing perspective, you probably noticed that we were aiming you in a very specific direction. But just to call out, what were some things you guys noticed that this text did well?
Well, I think we talked about the way he sets up the introduction, kind of the personal connection to it, and then moving from that personal connection into the kind of the source material. And the way he sets that up is smooth and well developed.
Okay, so what was particularly powerful about that personal story? Why was that good? Why does that engage the audience?
Well, I think many of us are adults who are reading this. Our students are going to have some experience themselves with being children that have been terrified, possibly, or have experience with younger siblings that have been terrified. So I think that it really connects to a wide variety of people that could be encountering this article.
Like my 5-year-old hates public restrooms, just like that. I mean, from the over-torqued flush that sounds like a bomb's going off to the hand dryers screaming at her. So like it just,
yeah.
Yes, I identified directly with what he's talking about.
My oldest was terrified of public restrooms with the flushing toilets that were automatic because they'd always go off while she was sitting on them. So that was,
okay.
Yeah, so I get it.
We all have a universal experience with it, and I think the audience is going to connect with that. And so it wasn't just an anecdote to pull us in and go, oh, I connect to the author. It was an anecdote that is really, I would label it a universal experience, or at least a wide experience. But the truth is, our students have had a connection being small children who grew up with hand dryers. We as parents have had kids who've had problems with that. Other adults have at some time had nieces, nephews, other kids who they've seen it in the public restroom, kids going like this every time the hand dryer goes off. What other things did this text do particularly well?
I think that it had a really good logical order.
Okay.
That transitioned nicely throughout the piece. Like when they would present the data, they would back up the data with how other people also kind of follow along with that same thought process. I thought that was really nice.
So would you say they backed up the data with secondary proof?
Yes, yes, much more eloquently than what I just said.
Okay, good. Logical order, how would we label out the logical order? Because you said they had good transitions and that they backed up the data with logical proof. So I'm actually going to pull that out as a separate bullet. Data, which was logical, zeros, backed with secondary proof. Okay. What was good about the transitions? You had mentioned that. Did you notice anything? Was it paragraph to paragraph, sentence to sentence, all of the transitions, just good transitions? Any specific thing?
Just all of them.
Okay.
It had a nice flow. I didn't feel like I got lost or was led astray at any point.
And so that goes back up to the text's organizational structure, right? I think is a thing we called out. Okay. Golly, you haven't called out the main thing I would use this for yet. What do you guys, you want me to have it? You want me to claim it? This thing does a great job. Like when we talk about the data, it does a great job with evidence, right? Like particularly, it does a great job with factual evidence. It is a scientific experiment. It is backed up. not only is it backed up with that secondary proof, we have a 13-year-old girl who conducted a scientific experiment, which on the surface, that talks about the ethos of the writer, right? So that's questionable that she's a 13-year-old girl doing it. But then the author provides other sources that back up what might be the questionable source. Like, all of these sources are corroborated. So this 13-year-old girl, who is a kid, who has some authority to speak on a kid experience with hand dryers, now has even more authority because she used an actual, like, decibel, a professional level grade decibel reader and things of that nature. And at the end, the author mentions the other surveys that back that up, or the other scientific studies that back that up. So if I'm a teacher and I'm using this, if I did this with my class, definitely do the things we just did. You can say good transitions, but I need some specifics on why that is good. The data was logical. They didn't just say the things and then they explained it, which is one of the things we talked about. But getting to the point where we label it out. Why is a person, if we just leave that as a personal anecdote, our kids are going to tell a personal story. And we know from kids' anecdotes in writing, are their anecdotes always logical, there for a reason, well written, engaging for us? No, but this one is a good example of it being very engaging. Jennifer, did you have something else you wanted to say?
Well, with that in mind, I actually wonder if we can argue that there's some pathos in this as well, in their evidence. By starting this article out using children, which should be protected, by starting with that, anecdotal evidence, and again, talking about kids, and then going further into how they're actually being damaged, we are pulling an emotional tie from our audience members there.
Well, and to bridge that gap between that emotion and the logical, there's a portion where he calls out how the decibel readings are like the jackhammer, and how they say that that's only good for 15 minutes of adult exposure. And then immediately spins that back, that very logical, oh man, that's not good. He spins it back to the pathos saying, so imagine what effect that has on kids. And so kind of bridging the gap between those different appeals.
Okay, awesome. Hopefully in your reading, teachers, you found all of those things. And please understand, we know that we have 6th grade teachers up to senior English teachers that will be watching and taking and doing this. Not every standard says pathos, logos, and ethos, right? That becomes particularly important at English 2 level. And it's argumentative, but it also shows up in any informational text. Like, why should I believe this is a question that has to be answered.
And actually I'm glad you mentioned that, at our lower level standards around those, it just wants the appeals. It doesn't ask for that language. It just wants them to know about an emotional appeal, a logical appeal, and then that appeal to credibility. Right. So terminology is not as important as the concept. Okay,
good. All right, so with that in mind, we now need to think about, how are we going to transition to teaching this with our students? So